How did this happen? How did this happen, best you can tell?
Well,
Chris.
I mean, look, it's been kind of a 4-month, 5-month evolution. I mean, I was part of the local broadcasts in November and December where they were just awful. Like, there's no two ways about it. And I distinctly recall, every night kind of saying the same thing after a game where they don't play with passion. They don't play with focus. They look disorganized. They don't seem to like each other all that much. I thought rock bottom for this team was this late December loss in Minnesota where they played the Timberwolves, who were without, I think, their top 4 guys, and they still lost to basically a minor league version of that team. That we're here now talking about the Celtics in the finals is one of the most improbable turnarounds I can remember. I mean, if you want to boil down kind of what it, what it is that got them here, it's defense. Ime Udoka, even during the dark days, was teaching them a brand of defense that they weren't used to, a switch everything type of defense that was predicated on the skill set of Marcus Smart and his ability to be a defender in the ways that previous Celtic point guards, whether it's Isaiah Thomas, Kyrie Irving, Kemba Walker, couldn't be. They stuck with that. They finally got it. And from early January to now, they have been the best defensive team in the NBA by a country mile. And when you can play that type of defense, everything else is kind of just gravy because you can beat a lot of teams by being a great defensive team.
Well, I mean, and then you could go even further back a few months, just Udoka's hiring and Brad Stevens being kicked upstairs. We were wondering what the hell was that all about? And so is this what they had envisioned? Or, just to put in a plan that we're going to come in with this defense and turn Marcus Smart into the defensive player of the year, and that will open things up on the other end for Brown and Tatum and everyone else? Like, is this truly the manifestation of the vision when they made that surprising maneuver with Stevens and Udoka?
In some ways, I don't think they could have accurately predicted how well Marcus Smart would adapt to the point guard position. Look, there was interest within Boston, Lonzo Ball, when he was a free agent in July. Ball just got an overwhelming offer from Chicago and never advanced past, the thought stage. But there was definitely questions about whether Smart could do it. He had been an elite defensive player for years, most of his career, but he had never been a primary playmaker. So nobody really knew if he was going to be able to do that. He turned out to be great at it. Had one of his finest seasons and adapted incredibly well to the point guard position. But you mentioned Brad Stevens. I was critical of his decision to move to the front office, more critical really of the Celtics' decision to allow it. I've got a tremendous amount of respect for Brad Stevens, the coach. I thought, even despite the last couple of years being so-so, that he was still a top 5, top 10, whatever you want to call it, coach in the NBA. It befuddled me why the Celtics would allow that coach to leave to take a role he had never done before. But there's no two ways about it, Rich. The Celtics wouldn't be here if Brad Stevens wasn't the GM. Danny Ainge does not make the trade that brought Al Horford to Boston with Oklahoma City. He doesn't do it because Danny Ainge does not give up an unprotected first-round pick to the Thunder in that deal. He just doesn't do it. That's not his thing. Danny Ainge, and this is not a criticism of Ainge because this entire roster was created largely by him. Most of the top guys were brought in because of deals or draft picks that he made. But Danny Ainge doesn't make the deal that brought Derek White to Boston at the trade deadline because you had to give up a first-round pick and a future swap right. Danny doesn't do deals like that. Brad has a different approach, looks at draft capital differently, and he made those two deals where without them, the Celtics would be dead in the water. I mean, where would they have been all season without Al Horford? Where would they have been in these playoffs without Al Horford? Where would they have been without Derek White, who turned it on really after just the second or third game in the first round and became a huge part of what this team did? Brad Stevens is as responsible for the success of this team as anyone in that organization. Media doesn't vote for NBA Executive of the Year, but he would have had my vote for Executive of the Year.
And then on top of it, Chris Mannix, the team they just vanquished, Pat Riley being at the top of that flow chart, his phrase that I always sticks with me is teams that successful teams need to avoid the disease of more, right? When obviously when you win a championship, everyone wants more, or you're successful, everyone wants more, and not focusing on the team. And in that respect, how does Tatum and Brown avoid the disease of more? Because sometimes Tatum's the Batman and Brown's the Robin, and then they switch roles, and it's sometimes possession by possession. How do they avoid that? How does that work, that relationship?
Well, I think it's a commitment to winning first and foremost that both these guys have. And look, they're not flawless in this regard. It's kind of been a joke in recent years within members of the organization that when you get into like late December and January with these two guys, you kind of see a lot of your turn, my turn stuff as both these guys try to get on the All-Star team. There's definitely a competitiveness for individual accolades that exist within these two guys. But they're both extremely comfortable in their own skin. They're both extremely comfortable with their roles. And that's more of a credit to Jaylen Brown, who on a different team could probably be a Tatum type. He's never going to be the scorer that Tatum is and will be. But Jaylen Brown could, on lesser teams, could certainly be the alpha. But Jaylen Brown understands what his job is within his team. He's more of a ball handler. He's still getting his shots, as we've seen all postseason. He's had, rarely has he had a game where he shot less than 15 times in one. But he understands he's a playmaker, a defender, and when the Celtics need a bucket, more often than not, the ball's going to find its way into Jason Tatum's hands, and Jaylen Brown's fine with that. So when you have a second star that accepts that, it makes everything easier for everybody else.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.